Jackson? And then,
Yeah, oh yes,
yeah.
yes, I did. But most of it, you see, I say I knew Bob Jackson. Well, that's nonsense. I was a kid then,
Sure.
you know. Bob Jackson, of course, lived down on the corner of Hanford and 394 down there, the Lakewood Road. And we moved from Meadow Lane, where across from the Fairmount School there, we moved up in Broadview, where Bill lives now on Warwick Road, in 1932, when I was 4 years old.
Mhm.
And as I grew up, we all played at Goodell's, where Charlie Goodell lived.
Mhm.
John and Charlie and Bill and George and all the Goodell boys down there. And the Goodell's, that was where all the kids gathered. And I don't ever remember that Bill Jackson, I think he was probably older I mean, I know he's a lot older than I was, but older than the kids that played down there. But as I told you on the telephone, I remember as a kid going down to Jackson's, and they had two garages in back. Once where they kept their car, and then there was another, like a storage garage down there, and that's where Bill Jackson kept his Model A truck. And I'd go down there as a kid and look at that truck, and just, it was a gorgeous truck, I'll tell you. But we played in the neighborhood, as they say down there. And then when the Jacksons left and went to Washington, the Niebanks moved in that house down there. And Mr. Niebank, I think he was a state banking examiner, if I'm not mistaken. They lived somewhere down near Rochester, because they had a summer place on Canisius Lake. And I remember the Niebank boys always going back to Canisius Lake to visit friends back there. And so when they moved into that house down there, of course, we'd go down and stay overnight with the Niebank boys down there, and it was a gorgeous home, that Jackson home, probably still is, but big living room, I remember, and a music room, and a big formal dining room, and the kitchen was in the back, and then they had a sleeping porch up over the kitchen. So we'd go down there. It was always a great treat to sleep out on that sleeping porch as kids, you know. And then when the Niebank boys grew up, they went up and bought a place up on Westminster Drive. And of course, we were still very close to the Niebank boys at that time. And then I assumed that Jackson House was sold at that time. I don't know when the Niebanks moved.
Sure. You might get Miles coming in too.
Yeah, wonderful.
Bring him on in.
Yeah.
Sure. Terrific.
But when as I say, when the Jackson place was sold down there, I assume it was sold. I have no idea to whom it was sold to. But then Mr. Jackson would come and visit the Niebanks, and he would come to our house, and Bob and Irene Jackson, Mrs. Jackson's name was Irene. They were friends of my parents.
Yeah.
But I never knew them personally. I remember I mentioned to you once before that Jackson rode up one time on a bicycle, the Niebanks, and they had the kids' bicycles, and they rode up and sat on the front porch and talked to my parents. Hi, Miles.
Bill, how are you?
Of course, they were great friends of the Niebanks, you know, George Niebank, and of course they were neighbors.
Yep.
And I remember sitting on the front porch with my father back, which I assume was, you know, in the 40s or early 50s, when Jackson came riding up the driveway one day with Mr. Niebank on the kids' bicycles, on the two-wheelers, you know, and they rode up and sit on the front porch and talk. But that's about the only connection I ever had with Jackson.